Metaphorically, one way to think about the gut barrier is that it's a coffee filter and it's meant to filter out the coffee grinds. And, it keeps out the bad and retains the good. And so that's sort of a simple definition. We'll go into a little bit more detail, kind of biochemically and structurally what that means. But just to think about this metaphor in a little bit more detail, the gut tract is the largest interaction of the human body with the outside world. The surface area is about 400 square meters, which is sort of the surface area of a soccer field or a tennis court. And that's our largest interface with the outside world. And in the GI tract, there resides something on the range of 40 trillion microbial cells. And so just beyond the gut barrier, is most of the immune system. About 70% of the body's immune system resides in the gut lining. There's a well-known doctor whom some of you might know by the name of Mark Hyman. He likes to say that, 70% of our immune system is just one cell away from a sewer. And so you can imagine how critical it is to maintain this integrity when you're in such close proximity to trillions of microbes. Some are good, some are bad. What they saw in the fiber deficient diet were basically two things. Number one, this green layer was significantly degraded. And number two, there was an increased concentration of bacteria that consume the mucus layer, that green layer. And so they essentially hypothesized two things. Number one, that without getting complex carbohydrates, such as fibers, the bacteria actually consume the mucus layer as an energy source because they're not getting fiber, which is really their energy source. And so number one, that mucin layer was degraded. And number two, there was an increased concentration, a bloom of bacterial species that degrade the mucin layer. And so that was one study. The second study was that they bred successive generations of mice that basically were continued to be fed on a fiber deficient kind of highly processed food diet. And what they noticed by about the fourth generation was that about 2/3 of the microbial diversity of the gut microbiome was completely wiped out. And so the second hypothesis was just that living on a diet consisting of highly processed foods basically is completely disruptive to the diversity of the gut microbiome, which is really one of the strongest signals of health in the gut microbiome. Unfortunately, it's not just mice that are having fiber deficient diets. This is an abstract from a cross-sectional study, which was sort of from NHANES, which is the largest national nutrition database. And the last time it was published demonstrated that about 60% of the calories from the US diet come from ultra-processed foods. And so it sort of begs the question as to if this is happening in research models, what's happening in human health. And so it's not good for chronic disease. These foods are made by deconstructing natural food into its chemical constituents, modifying them and recombining them into new forms that bear little resemblance to anything found in nature. So radically are they altered that nutrition scientists have given them a new name, ultra-processed. Ultra-processed foods are often designed to directly target the vulnerabilities of the human brain, in particular to exploit the way the brain processes pleasurable sensations. They often deliver a signal to the brain's reward centers so quick and so potent, some neuroscientists believe that many people find it as addictive as opioids or nicotine. So I read this really to give you a sense for, how far we've gotten away from eating kind of real whole foods. They are, manufactured to the point of almost being as pleasurable and almost as addictive as drugs. And so the fact that 60% of the US diet is coming from ultra processed foods, is really, sort of how far we've come in terms of disruption to the standard American diet. Essentially, like what to take from this study. I sort of interpret this to say that both fiber as well as fermented foods are a critical component of the diet. And I think in certain cultures around the world, fermented foods are a much more critical staple of the daily diet, whereas I think in the standard American diet, we are likely to consume very little fermented foods. And so I think this is a reminder that one of the best things we can do from a dietary perspective to reinforce gut diversity and decrease inflammation is consume a diet high in fermented foods. And just for sake of discussion, fermented foods include anything that have live microbial products. So those types of foods are misos and kimchis, sauerkraut, also yogurts and kefirs, kombucha. There have been studies that actually have used public speaking as a stress test and have looked at gut barrier lining after these stress exposures and have shown increased gut permeability. So I guess we'll see what this talk is going to do to my gut lining. On the flip side, stress management has been shown to reinforce gut barrier function, particularly things such as vagal nerve stimulation. The vagal nerve is really the most significant component that connects the central nervous system to the GI tract, and it's part of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest part of the autonomic nervous system. And people have techniques to stimulate the vagus nerve through different types of breathing, such as diaphragmatic breathing, which we'll actually talk about more next week when we talk about the gut-brain axis. Nature exposure studies have shown that, particularly in children, that more frequent nature exposure has been associated with broader diversity of gut microbial species. And there's also really interesting data that shows particularly kids that grow up with pets in the home or that grow up on farms have lower rates of chronic allergic and inflammatory diseases. It's also possible our national recommendations are far below what we actually should be consuming. So to give you an example, the recommendations are roughly in the range of 30 grams of fiber a day. If you look at the healthiest populations historically, where they actually epidemiologically don't face the same burden of chronic allergic inflammatory diseases and autoimmune diseases, they're kind of like hunter-gatherer type populations. And we have some representative populations around the world that have kind of persisted in this lifestyle. And so one that has been frequently studied is called the Hazda population. They're sort of a primarily hunter-gatherer tribe in Eastern Africa, and their lifestyle consists of mostly consuming kind of root vegetables and tubers. And, they have hunts for meat, but I think it's something like only 1 in 20 or 1 in 30 of the hunts are successful. So most of their diet really consists of basically root vegetables, and their diet is somewhere in the order of 100 grams of fiber a day. And so it's hard to say. I would say that it's very difficult to go from 5 to 10 grams of fiber a day to 30 or 40, let alone 100. So the things I would say are that generally it's thought that the more fiber, the better. But a lot of times people have to slowly work their way up to that because it can lead to some GI distress, some bloating, some abdominal discomfort if one tries to increase the fiber load too quickly when the gut microbes haven't adapted to it and aren't capable of sort of metabolizing the undigestible fibers. It's all generally for overall health. I think that the study I talked about would support just incorporating fermented foods into the diet. We think that fermented foods are more likely to actually lead to kind of structural changes of the gut microbiome and lead to increased diversity, whereas the probiotics, they're just sort of passing ships. They kind of pass through the GI tract, but they don't really stick. And so I often tell patients to, maybe consider saving their money, or if they want to have active cultures, to try to get them from what we call functional foods rather than, buying probiotics. Jeff?